Philip Curtis, Philip Curtis's favorite episode is Seesaw Saga. So this is a story about a skydiver falling on a seesaw that a little girl is on, and could it send her flying? And the answer is absolutely no. But once we proved that, then there was the challenge of setting up weight that weighed as much as an adult person, 175 pounds, that would hit an unbreakable seesaw at terminal velocity, which is about 120 miles per hour. And so we had I haven't even gotten to the question. Philip Curtis loves Seesaw Saga and is wondering if I could talk about the decision to work with the build team on that episode. He loved seeing all 5 of us working on the same project, and also being present for the full-scale test. That was a really fun one for all of us as well. There were so many giant parts to this story because in addition to this unbreakable seesaw, which is its own engineering challenge, and a little girl crash test dummy, which we had, we needed a weight that we could hit the seesaw with at a skydiver's terminal velocity, like 100 to 120 miles an hour. So what we ended up building was this very scary rig that was a reverse slingshot using surgical tubes. And this is the way we could take this 180-pound weight and use a crane to tension it and then pull a quick release to release it into the seesaw and go. So I just want you to wrap your head around the logistics of this. Oh, also, we are filming this up in Mare Island, at the edge of Vallejo, where Maker Faire has been happening. And on Mare Island, there are some dry docks where they serviced submarines during the Cold War, and we're at the bottom of one of these dry docks. So it's 40 feet deep. This is the same dry dock we filmed Duct Tape Bridge and many other stories. But we're there with the crash test dummy and the seesaw. The seesaw has been mounted and bolted to the concrete floor of the dry dock. The crash test dummy is there. But as you can imagine, setting up a reverse slingshot with surgical tubing and a 180-pound weight pointed directly down is a fraught and dangerous operation. This is something that when it operates correctly, if you're in the wrong place, it could kill you. So these kind of rigs take a long time to set up safely and correctly. And when you're pulling a quick release, what is happening is you're setting up a very dangerous situation and then you're putting it on a hair trigger, which again means that like nobody can go back and touch a camera once you've evacuated each zone of safety as you move towards the final experiment. You've got to creep up very, very slowly on these kind of dangerous parameters or they will bite you, and biting you failure is catastrophic in these cases. So we would creep very slowly on it. And so for the final experiment, the final upside down slingshot, I think we had a couple of takes that didn't go exactly right. And so we were setting up to do it again. And in this case, the sun is setting and shadows are moving across the bottom of the dry dock because the sun is setting. And the shadows are moving towards our experimental frame. It's moving towards the seesaw. And the old high-speed cameras we used to have needed a ton of light, needed massive amounts of light because they're exposing for very, very short periods of time. And even with big lenses, these were very light-hungry devices. And so we are very clear that as this shadow is moving across and we're just making sure everyone's safe. Camera team 1, are you safe? Camera team 2, are you safe? You're going through all the protocols. But as we're doing this, the light is racing towards the experiment. And the moment the shadow hits the experiment, we have to call it. We have to take everything down and come in the next day because there won't be enough light to get the high-speed shot that is the whole reason we are here. And we got it. We got it with, honestly, like 2-3 minutes to spare. I can't tell you how many times we were racing light to get a high-speed shot. That was like one of the most regular, stressful situations on the show. Seesaw Saga was spectacular. That was really, really fun. But man, setting up a bear trap that is, using cranes and hundreds of pounds of surgical tubing and a weight and a seesaw. It's like, I'm getting sort of like I'm getting sort of, what do you call it? Like, I'm vibing on the stress 20 years apart from having done that. Because like, it's a thing. One of the key ways that you keep a whole crew safe when you're doing dangerous things is you make sure that everyone understands exactly what's happening all the time. And that is really difficult to do from a logistical standpoint. When we lost that cannonball in the East Bay, and it luckily didn't injure anybody, but it did damage some property, one of the huge safety protocols that changed for us was that we started to have we would have a safety meeting at the beginning of a story. We would talk to the crew, working it out, what we were going to do. And then for any experiment that we were doing, anytime we were doing an experiment where it was like setting something up, trying it out, we would have a meeting just before the experiment, let everyone know what was going to happen. Here's where that's likely to fly, here what's going to happen over here, and this is what's going to happen. And then when we were on location, every single location day began with a safety meeting with everyone present. Here's how today is going to go. And if we changed our parameters at lunchtime, we would have another safety meeting. And the mission critical thing is that no one is lacking the information to be safe. So like everyone is in designated zones. I've got to tell you, from a safety standpoint, this really came to fruition in the last shot of Mythbusters, which is me driving the truck through a mile of Mythbuster props. Our crew spent several weeks setting up a mile of debris on the Alameda runway, looking at San Francisco. In multiple stations, one for every year the show existed, and there were pieces of every show. God, it cost so much money to set this up. And I'm driving through the middle of this with a truck with this giant cow catcher on the front, and there's only one take. We're only getting one take of this, ever. And with about halfway through that run, the piece of plywood covers over my windshield, and I can no longer see out front. But because of our safety procedures, I knew that there was nobody downrange that I could hit, because we had made sure that all the people involved in this experiment would be level with me and the truck. So downrange was a safe zone because there was no one there to be hurt. And even though my windshield was covered with plywood, I could see Willie Nail in his camera car over here, and I could see Scott Sorensen in his camera car over here. And I could see all the I could see all the crew I needed to see. I'd see those folks are safe, and I started using their relationship to make sure I was driving up the middle. But none of that would have been possible if we hadn't thought through all of these kinds of possibilities. And that was another thing that we would do in the safety meeting. It's like everyone gets to talk about what they're scared about. And if someone has a concern, there's so many times, some crew member would just be like, hey, what about this? And oh yeah, we got to take care of that. And making sure that no one was downrange was a very specific decision we made from a safety standpoint. What was the original question? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I wanted to briefly mention that you could become a tested member. I know, everybody is competing for you to become a member of their thing. What I want to express to you is that the Tested membership has become such an important part of the Tested family. We get tremendous feedback from the Tested members, and they expand the stories that we can tell and the things that we have access to, and you can become a part of it right now by clicking on the link below. See you in the chat.